and there are a lot of friends around her, so we're going to send her best wishes. But I know it is so warm out here, and I want to thank everybody for spending the time on this beautiful July 4th to be here and to be here visiting with us. It means the world to me. And there's so many other things all of you could be doing with your time. Hi, G-Checks. But to see you out here today really means so much. So I'm going to just start talking about a couple of my ideas and thoughts, and then I would love to hear from you. So we're going to pass the microphone around, because I will tell you guys, I fully intend to win this election. Not yet though. But for me, that will be certainly a measure of our success, but equal measure of success in my mind is going to be that at the end of this process that we are relevant. And one of the best ways to ensure that is for me to make sure I listen as much as I talk. And who better than these great Iowans to listen to? Because you guys, what happens to this state, in this state, with this state is certainly a bellwether of what happens in our United States. And so again, I want to thank all of you. And where is our great leader? There. Where is he? What happened to Scott? Did he go inside? Okay. Well, you're right in front of me. What an introduction. My goodness. You have no idea how much it meant to me. My husband, Doug, was over there. Doug. Doug was saying, wow, he sounds like a pastor. Amen. Amen. So thank you for that. It means the world to me that you've spent your time here today and with that introduction. So thank you for that. So, so much to talk about, and where do we start? I'll start by just saying that this day that we celebrate, the day of our independence, is a day for good reason that I think in terms of why we celebrate, that we should celebrate every day. And certainly I think this election in 2020 is highlighting the importance of what we celebrate today. We are a nation that was founded on noble ideals. The ideals that were present when we wrote the Constitution of the United States and all of its amendments. The ideals that were present in the Declaration of Independence and those words we spoke in 1776, that we are all and should be treated as equals. And the founders of our nation, they knew what they were doing. You know, over the course of these last 2 years and some months, I know many of us have been throwing things at that inanimate object called a television, you know, going through individual and group therapy, I know. And many of us have asked, what's going on, what's happening, and what's happening to our democracy? Well, here's how I think about it. The founders, in their brilliance, imagined a moment like this. They imagined a moment where we would have to test the design of our democracy, to test and make sure that we were ensuring a democracy where there would not be tyranny, where there would not be abuse of power, where we would ensure a government that was reflective of our values and our ideals. So they designed our democracy with 3 independent co-equal branches of government, right? If you think of the republic as being a tabletop, right? The democracy being a tabletop. It stands on 4 legs. The 3 co-independent, equal branches of government and a free and independent press. Mm-hmm. And so what have we seen over the course of these last 2 years and some months? We have seen when the executive branch would dare to get rid of a healthcare policy that brought healthcare to tens of millions of people, a healthcare policy that said pre-existing conditions should not be a barrier to health care, right? And so, when the executive branch, because they wanted to politicize public health, because they had a political agenda that they came in office on and then worked on for 9 months, trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act, what happened? That co-equal independent branch of government called the United States Congress, led in many ways by the late, great John McCain, said, nope, you've gone too far. Our democracy in action. Our democracy in action. When they attempted to push policy such as denying dreamers protection by DACA, the Deferred Action of Childhood Arrivals. And what happened? Our court said, nope, you've gone too far, you gotta stop. What have we seen? We have seen the press. I am convinced that had the press and journalists not in droves travel down to our border to allow the United States people, the people of our country, to witness firsthand what was a human rights abuse being committed by our government when they separated children from their parents. Had the press not been there to allow us to witness this, Americans all over our country would not have stood up in a bipartisan way to say, you've gone too far. This is not reflective of who we are or our values, and you gotta stop. Our democracy is being tested, and I talked about a tabletop. I'll just now shift to, let's call the democracy like a shack or a house, right? So it's kind of, we're experiencing a natural disaster, yeah, and some of the shingles are falling off, but the house is still standing. The house is still standing. And as evidenced by the fact that all of the friends and neighbors and family members under this beating sun on a very warm day are out here together, shoulder to shoulder. Could be doing so many other things, but we are here together because we are prepared to fight for this country we love. And that is evidence that our democracy is intact. So on this 4th of July, I would ask that we walk away from this afternoon with our chins up and our shoulder back, knowing that one of the most important ingredients in our democracy is we the people. We the people. And we will always stand up and fight for we the people. So let's celebrate that on this July 4th. Let's celebrate that. And so in terms of my background, I will tell you, my sister Maya, she's here, Maya. We were raised by parents who met in the 1960s while they were active in the civil rights movement. So we often joke that we grew up surrounded by a bunch of adults who spent full-time marching and shouting. Yes, they did. About this thing called justice. And in fact, so many of the heroes of that movement were the lawyers like Thurgood Marshall, who understood the ability to translate the passion from the streets to the courtrooms of our country, right? To do the work of reminding people of that promise in 1776 that we're equal, that inspired me to become a lawyer. And I will tell you that as we look then at the fights before us, truly it is a fight for the people and for the voice of the people. And there is so much at stake, and there is so much we have to do. And I think about it then through the context of also the way I was raised, that was not only about fighting for equality and justice and freedom for all people, but I think about it through the lens of our mother, Maya. Our mother. I know, there is a cute baby right there. But our mother was fierce. She was fierce. And she raised us with the belief that your measure in life will be based on the people that you impact and the people that you lift up. Our mother was fierce in her belief that you will be judged based on your actions, not your words. And she taught us that it is critically important that we always have the ability to see what can be, unburdened by what has been, and fight for that as a reality. And our mother really has influenced so much about how I think about this race and the work that is ahead of us. You know, our mother also, you know, she was all of 5 feet tall. But if you ever met her, you would have probably thought she was 7 to 10 feet tall. And she was the kind of parent that if you ever came home complaining about anything, our mother would look at you, perhaps with one hand on her hip, and with a very straight face, she would ask, well, what are you going to do about it? So I decided to run for president of the United States. There you go. So on that point then, let's talk about what we have all been witnessing over these last couple of years. The guy in the White House. This guy in the White House made a whole lot of promises to America that he broke. And he has betrayed American families. Let's look at what we have seen. We've seen a president of the United States who came into office saying that he was going to protect farmers. No. Yet, he initiates trade policy by tweet, with the result that Iowa farmers, many are looking at the potential for bankruptcy. Many are looking at soybeans rotting in bins. Many are looking at a market that they cultivated over at least a decade to sell to China that has now been cut off, where Brazil has stepped in and we may not ever be able to regain ground. And we're looking at the fact that as a result of that trade policy, also American families are currently paying on average $1.4 billion more a month for everything from shampoo to washing machines. What have we seen in the current president of the United States?
Bullshit.
Right. Tell it to what it is. I call that too. What have we seen? He said he was going to come in and help working families. But yet, what do? They pass a tax bill benefiting the top 1% and the biggest corporations in this country, wherein last year, as evidence of what's wrong with this economy, 60 of the biggest corporations in the United States paid no taxes. Let's talk about what's wrong. When they are initiating policy that yet again is about preventing the American families and American people from having health care, when they again want to revive this attack to the point that they would make again pre-existing conditions be a barrier to access to health care. So I'm going to tell you something. What I think we have been seeing is a lot of evidence that in this former prosecutor's mind provides a great rap sheet that requires a prosecution of the case against 4 more years of a President Donald Trump. And I've got some experience with that. So let me tell you, as a prosecutor, I took on the big banks that preyed on homeowners. I took on the pharmaceutical companies and one that preyed on seniors. I prosecuted transnational criminal organizations that preyed on women and children. And I'm going to tell you guys, we have a predator living in the White House. Because here's the thing, there are certain qualities about a predator. Donald Trump has predatory instincts and a predatory nature. Because here's what you know. Predators prey on the vulnerable. They prey on those that they perceive to be weak. They prey on those who they perceive to have no power. And predators are cowards. Are cowards. Let's also look at the evidence that further makes this point. What do we have in the supposed commander-in-chief of the President of the United States? On an issue which is not disputed among thinking and knowledgeable people, which is that Russia interfered in the election of the President of the United States, what do we have in this so-called commander-in-chief? Someone who prefers to take the word of the Russian president over the word of the American intelligence community, because he admires strong men. What do we have in this commander-in-chief? An individual who prefers to take the word of a North Korean dictator over the word of the American intelligence community when it comes to an American student who was tortured and later died. What do we have in this commander-in-chief, the strong man as he pretends to be? An individual who prefers to take the word of a Saudi prince over the word of the American intelligence community when it comes to a journalist who was assassinated, a journalist who had American credentials. We need a new commander-in-chief. So there's plenty of evidence to make the point. I would also suggest that as we look at what is before us in 2020, it is not only about successfully prosecuting that case and being able to be on that stage in the general election and get the job done. It is also about fighting for the future of our America and fighting for the America we believe in. And that means fighting for working families in America, understanding that the economy of America is not working for working people, which is why I am proposing what economists have described as what would be the most significant middle-class tax cut we've had in generations. And specifically, what I am proposing is that for families that make less than $100,000 a year, they get a tax credit that they can collect at up to $500 a month, which will be all the difference between families being able to get through the end of the month with dignity or not. Let's fight for our America and the America that we believe we can have and that we believe is the right way and right approach. Let's fight for America, knowing that currently teachers are not being paid their value. We're 94% of our teachers in public schools are coming out of their own pocket to help pay for school supplies. Where right now, teachers on average are making 11% less than similarly educated professionals. Enough of that. Let's fight for our America and the America we believe in, which is why I am proposing what will be the first federal investment in closing the teacher pay gap. And here in Iowa, that gap is on average $12,200 a year. Let's be clear about what that is. $12,200 a year, that's a year's worth of mortgage payments. $12,200 a year, that's a year's worth of grocery bills. $12,200 a year, that's putting a significant dent in student loan debt, which is one of the greatest barriers to our students coming out and joining a profession for which they have a passion. Let's get it right. Let's fight for the future of America that we believe in. Let's fight for a future of America where we say, enough of kowtowing to the NRA. We need to pass reasonable gun safety laws, including the renewal of the assault weapons ban. And I'm going to tell you guys, I'm kind of fed up with this issue. I'm kind of done. Because, here's the thing. We've been talking about this for years. And I'm just sick of the false choice some people are trying to push. To say you're either in favor of the Second Amendment or you want to take everyone's guns away. That's a false choice. I'm tired of people who don't have the courage to say, hey, have fun hunting, but you know what? We need reasonable gun safety laws in this country. And so I'm going to tell you what I'm prepared to do. When elected, I will give the United States Congress 100 days to pull their act together on this and put a bill on my desk for signature. And if they fail to do it, because there are plenty of good ideas that could be in that bill. A lot of my colleagues on that debate floor have great ideas that I support. A lot of good ideas. Put them in that bill. But if they fail to do it, if the United States Congress fails to do it, I am prepared after 100 days to take executive action and put in place what will be the most comprehensive background check requirement in our country, and require that the ATF take the licenses of gun dealers who violate the law. And you should know, 90% of the guns associated with crime are sold by just 5% of the gun dealers. So you know the ATF is doing a fine enough job on the A and the T, but they could do a little bit more on that F. And then finally, by executive order, I am prepared to put a ban on the importation of assault weapons from foreign countries into our country. Let's fight for our America and the America we believe in. Let's fight for an America where no woman will be deprived access to reproductive health care, and no state legislature can get away with putting their opinion in front of what she and her physician and family know is in her best interest. Because right now in this America, women's access to reproductive health care is under attack. And we've got to take this on the defensive and the offensive, which is why I am prepared, when elected, to require that if any state that has a history of passing legislation that restricts a woman's access to reproductive health, that law will have to be cleared by our Department of Justice to determine whether it complies with Roe v. Wade, and until it clears, that's called pre-clearance, that law cannot go into effect. So I've got a lot more things to talk about, but I see everybody fanning themselves. So I'm going to end my comments so I can take some questions by saying this. And again,